Okay, well, let me kick this off and thank you for everyone else who's already listening in now. This is the first new space here for Concordium within identity and verification in Web3. And it won't be the last one as well. It's great that we have some industry peers, former associates that we've been speaking a lot to over the course of the past, let's say 2 years, right? Um, Simon, social digital identity, building out Solana ID now, and you, Ravi, as well, starting out in Polygon ID, but sort of been spanning out across reaching and targeting multiple blockchains as well for your ID services. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining in today. Let me just kick this off. I think that what we will talk about a lot today is how trust is the foundation of any system, right? And especially what I will be speaking a lot about today as well is how trust is the foundation of any financial system. And in a decentralized world, which is basically where and where we are right now, establishing trust without compromising privacy or security is a big challenge we're facing. I think both Simon and Ravi, the reason why you are also building out decentralized ID solutions is is basically because traditional identity systems doesn't really fit Web3, right? They're centralized, they are vulnerable to data breaches, they're not compatible with decentralized infrastructure, but at the same time as well, fully anonymous blockchain transactions and fully anonymous blockchain profiles create compliance risks that definitely prevent mainstream adoption. So, what we will tap in here today is how can we verify identity in Web3 while preserving user privacy, and how can we enable compliance without having centralized control? And then also, what I would really like your take on, and what is a big focus right now for Concordium, is how do we make Web3 financial services, stablecoins, payments, tokenized assets truly usable in more regulated industries as well. So this is what we will be exploring today. Um, and it's a great panel here, both with Solana ID and Privado ID, because everyone is offering a unique approach to decentralized identity. So maybe let's start with a quick round of introductions, and maybe you can start, Ravi, from Privado ID.
Hi, Fisher. Just go to Simon. There's some technical difficulties with Ravi. Thank you.
Okay, then let's go to you, Simon, please. Maybe you can
Yeah,
start off
yeah,
by giving a quick intro.
for sure. You hear me well now, Holger. Let's start with
Yes,
that.
very well, very well.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, good to hear your beautiful voice and happy to be here. Thanks for the invite as well. We've come quite a journey with Solana ID, as you said before. DSID, Digital Social ID, was basically born. When was it? Was it last year? I think it was last year, right? Last year, January. Um, I don't even I'm losing count of time by now. But we had 1 year of a lot of iterations and deep thoughts about where we want to position ourselves, and then we made the move similar to Privado ID to pivot and to rebrand and to find a new angle for our protocol. And then we gave birth to Solana ID, which is now the fastest growing identity layer on the Solana blockchain in the Solana ecosystem. That is also primed to expand in other ecosystems in the long term. But for now, we have a very clear focus on capturing the Solana ecosystem for all things identity, with a very sharp focus initially in our go-to-market on identifying target audiences and buyer personas for DApps. So we actually it's quite a twist on our identity protocol, because we are now we chose a path for us that is less focused on compliance and less focused on KYC credentials and these things. Without losing these capabilities, we are right now focusing more on targeted marketing for DApps based on sovereign identity data, which is an interesting concept that we can happily double tap on today as well. Even though I'm very curious also on the thoughts of Privado and yourselves on the compliance sector and the RWA space and the DeFi space and identity solutions inside there. But long story short, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Solana ID. I used to work in traditional finance and venture capital before that, and then pivoted into the crypto rabbit hole. And now I'm deeply in there. And yeah, all I do right now is trying to scale Solana ID to new heights.
Great. Perfect. Thank you very much. And you, Ravi, are you coming through now?
Yeah, I hope so. There should not be any more issues with spaces now. I hope I'm audible all okay.
Yes, loud and clear.
Cool. Yep. So, quick introduction. I'm Ravi Agrawal, Director of Growth at Privado ID, previously Polygon ID. I have been also working at Polygon Labs for 3+ years and previously into business and management consulting. I think with Privado ID, what we have been enabling is making sure that identity data verification is easy enough for any services, any device, any protocol. The exciting thing that we have to share is last Friday we have announced something we call as Billion.network. This is where we are trying to create a global human and AI network. So just a quick intro about Billions. Billions is the first human and AI network where we are building a mobile first verification to scale to the Internet of Value. This is where we are not depending on any hardware like iris scan or palm scan, but we are trying to leverage what is existing today in the form of digital infrastructure for many, many nations in the form of national ID or digital identities. And that's where, creating this decentralized and a private proof of personhood that is powered by Privado, and that should work for global network for both human and AI. So that's an exciting news that I wanted to share, and super excited for this panel, and looking forward to hear and contribute to both Simon and yourself.
Thank you very much, Ravi, and thank you, Simon. So, introduction from my side, working here in Concordium in the commercial team. Actually quite a new team that has been established over the course of the past 6 months, since we've had a whole new C-suite being pulled in. And basically, if you had to take a step back and introduce Concordium, we are right now the only layer one blockchain that integrates compliance-ready identity verification directly at the protocol level. And the big issues that we're trying to solve here within Web3 is, how do we verify identities while preserving privacy? How do we enable regulatory compliance without sacrificing decentralization? And then now a big new focus is, how do we make blockchain safe for payments and stablecoins and financial services? And basically, the way that we start to tackle this out at Concordium is that we have to build in ID layer. So we are enabling people and businesses to get an identity at the protocol level on Concordium. We're trying to reduce friction for businesses through this. We have extensive zero knowledge proofs, or CKPs technology, and as a cryptographic method that allows for more privacy preserving compliance. This could, for instance, be proving age or jurisdiction without revealing personal details. We're right now building out features to get rid of smart contract risk. So unlike a lot of other blockchains, we secure identity and payment functions at the protocol level, completely getting rid of and preventing exploits to vulnerable smart contracts. Another thing is, of course, that we have predictable transaction costs. So right now it's euro-pegged fees to eliminate gas fee volatility, making payments more practical for businesses, you can say. And then, of course, what we're building out on the roadmap as well, which was presented at the town hall meeting by the new leadership team, is programmable money features. And when I'm saying programmable money features, I'm talking about native locks, talking about scheduled transfers, and how this enables secure deposits and escrows and more milestone-based payments. So I think it's safe to say that right now Web3 adoption hinges on trust and compliance and financial services, and this is exactly what we're trying to build out on Concordium now. And I think both Simon and Ravi, as you've been following this space over the past couple of weeks with everything that happened over at Bybit, another big smart contract exploit, another big hack. for more than $1 billion, right? And it's exactly some of these issues that we need to alleviate and get rid of to ensure that we can, as the common saying go, bridge Web 2 and Web 3. But in terms of more setting the stage and the identity challenge here in Web 3, blockchain was built on trustless transactions, but of course, not every transaction should be anonymous. And if we take these centralized identity models, stuff we see at banks, government databases, social logins, they are very vulnerable to breaches and censorship. And at the same time, when you take a look at Web3 anonymity, it makes AML compliance, KYC compliance impossible. So it's definitely blocking institutional adoptions. Simon, how would you say that right now, at least within the Solana ecosystem and Solana ID, how are you looking at sort of combating these more centralized identity models and at the same time trying to combat Web3 anonymity to sort of balance that out? Is that something you're looking at right now?
I would say from a business perspective, from a strategic business perspective, from our side right now, we are actually looking less into these topics for now because we just didn't we didn't identify the demand in the space as of now. Like, and when I say now, I mean like yesterday, because our goal right now on a company level is to make revenues and become profitable ASAP. As a company. And for this, we need to deliver a service and fulfill a demand that is needed right now. And on the Solana blockchain, if I talk to all the DeFi apps right now, for now, they don't care too much about these things. And it's more like a visionary, ethos-driven thing that we can build out for the future, which is something you can do if you have very deep pockets as a protocol, and you'll most likely tap into a huge market in the future. But for us as a, let's say, smaller protocol in a niche market, we need to be very strategic in the decisions we make on what kind of business offering and product do we actually want to ship. So with that being said, that was what drove our decision to go more into the marketing FI sector and put identity in there, because while I'm a big believer in decentralized identity for DeFi, like I said, I think we need to first pick the low-hanging fruits. So I think one big learning we had in the Solana ecosystem and in that niche market, I would say, is that if we talk about decentralized identity, KYC checks, and using ZK proofs for that, the only utilities that DApps really want to utilize on that front is to identify unique users and distinguish them between bots, make sure that they're actually dealing with humans, make sure that their airdrops are being distributed to one person at a time and not to farmers, so that you can avoid having large chunks of your community rewards to single individuals, basically, that just manage multiple wallets. So all these kinds of use cases are more they're less regulatory driven, right? That the need doesn't really come from a regulatory stance. So that was one of the big learnings we had in the past months, just talking to DApps. So I think it's a very good moment right now for Concordium, for example, to tap into the compliance market and to get ready, because I think you're building super exciting tech for the future, and you are tapping into a market that is definitely huge, but you're building for the future. While we are right now building for yesterday, basically,
Yes,
for the immediate present, which is a different twist, to the whole system. But definitely, I think it's always it's a thin line to walk between complete anonymity and privacy and a great user experience and compliance, right? But both topics are on different ends. And we need to build systems that kind of walk this middle line. And that's where we started as well with DSID back in the day, where we also came up with this base primitive of we are too private in crypto, which is basically the topic we're talking about here. How can you be too private even? Like there was the whole USP why crypto and blockchain and decentralized systems took off, because we promised people complete anonymity and privacy. But then we kind of took a step back and we're like, at what cost? Like, at what cost does this come? And that's when we started to try to build bridges and walk the middle line, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And as you're saying also right now, I mean, from Concordium science at least, there's a big focus on stablecoin issuers financial institutions and how these regulators meet a middle ground, right? Because we are definitely identifying the anonymity risk where institutions and regulators are hesitant to adopt crypto due to AML, KYC, sanction concerns. Um, we are also focusing a lot right now, for instance, on bearer asset risk. If you lose your private keys, we all know this, everyone here, you lose your assets permanently, right? With no means for recovery. Also something we have on the Concordium roadmap, building out right now in terms of ID-based asset recovery. And then, of course, the smart contract and human error risk. Many Web3 identity systems rely on smart contracts, which are exploitable to attack vectors, right? But I definitely understand that if you take someone like Solana ID, maybe that's not on your immediate roadmap, even though you are acknowledging the importance of it and something that you have to focus on at a later stage where you have a possibility to do so. Definitely, Simon. But Ravi, you were speaking in the beginning here as well in terms of Privado ID that you are launching billions, first global human and AI network. But a lot of that is centered around privacy preserving technology. Um, you're doing it the non-biometric way, like we're seeing with WorldCoin doing. You're trying to be as decentralized as possible. And you're trying to do these more scalable alternatives to existing proofs of personhood solutions. So how exactly would you say that fit in to the overall narrative of identity and verification in Web3 and how that ensures trust and helps more people move over from Web2 to Web3, which I think is the overarching mission for everyone here.
Yeah, certainly. I think, first and foremost, I think when we are talking about the decentralized identity system, I think we are trying to ensure that we are not truly dependent on the centralized players. I think everybody remembers very well, back in days, I believe sometime in 2021, once there was the outage from Facebook, I think it left billions of people not able to access their service tied to Facebook. I think those are the kind of solutions where we can improve those things. When we are talking about decentralized systems, we can bring in those interoperability. We can, bring in those privacy aspect. I heard Simon in terms of the readiness for the market. I think there are spectrum of use cases where, there may not be mass appealing use cases for privacy, but then there are growing use cases which may need some kind of a derivative privacy aspect. For example, if a human do not wanted to share any private credentials but still wanted to ensure that it's a proof of personhood or proof of unique personhoods can be derived out of those credentials, how can we send it? And maybe another example could be where not necessarily disclosing the wallet address and still ensuring that the proof for holding of the asset can be passed on in order to get a whitelisted into airdrops. I think some of those privacy oriented use cases are growing. I think this is where we realize that we need to also bring out consumer application built on top of what we have developed over last few years with Privado. And I think this is where the billion network comes in. And we are trying to leverage the existing digital infrastructure, as I was saying, in order to create this kind of proof of personhood. And this can facilitate so many interesting use cases to start with on the airdrop side, or ensuring that we are creating those bot resistant solutions and so on. And I think there can be multiple derived use cases out of this where we can ensure that in the future, if we wanted to create those age assurance, gender assurance, maybe sanction list and other, I think those can also be powered. So overall, what we are feeling is that while we are comparing the risk of anonymity and trying to see how verified identity could play a role, we feel that it's going to be a growing spectrum where we would be able to create that kind of an anonymity with the help of the ZK powers as we go along. But there has to be a right balance between what we see in terms of privacy and accountability.
Exactly. And I think you hit the nail right on that one, because what we are looking at here as well, just saying, is exactly how we verify identity and not storing it, right? And how we at Concordium allow users to prove their credentials using zero knowledge proofs without revealing private data. And when let's sort of move a little bit on here, just to make
Question.
sure that we stay
I have
on
a question.
time.
Can I
Yeah,
ask a
of course, Simon.
I know we need to stay on time, but I want to ask you guys. Sorry for crashing in here on the ZKP front of things. Like I have seen or I have experienced a lot of hesitation from the more institutional side of things for zero knowledge proof technology because of the limitations in data accuracy, especially when it comes to compliance and regulation. Because so far, to my awareness, but that's basically my question. To my awareness, it is very difficult to use zero knowledge proofs in a system where you are required to provide identity data when the regulator asks you for it, because you only have hashes and encrypted data points. You can't really provide them any detailed data. So what was your experience on that front, maybe at Privado ID or especially on Concordium side of things? How feasible is that system yet? And did you come up with solutions that utilize zero knowledge proofs and are still feasible and ready to be compliant at the same time, or do we need different technologies for that than ZK proofs? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe I can take a stab at it first. So basically, I mean, if you take zero knowledge proofs here at Concordium, it has been sort of a recurring concern, primarily regarding their usability, complexity, and alignment with an overall ID layer, right? But when you sort of take a stab at addressing these concerns with a mix of technical solutions and communication and practical integration, I think, for instance, to begin with, it's a lot about abstracting CK implementation. So you offer more easy-to-use libraries and APIs that sort of abstract the CPI mechanics while you are ensuring compliance, because many concerns stem from a lack of clear, accessible documentation on how to use zero knowledge proofs. And for instance, with Concordium, we are providing a lot of examples and tutorials and SDKs that sort of can update with that help. Because basically it's about how you optimize proof generation and how you optimize verifications. So the concerns often arise around efficiency, ensuring that proof generation remains sort of lightweight while they are maintaining security is key, right? So if you, for instance, take Concordium, and let's not go out and speak about Web3 ID, but if we talk about zero knowledge proofs as a cryptographic method at the protocol level, when you go in and you create a Concordium account in the CryptoX wallet, what you actually do is that you get your identity verified at an ID provider. We use someone like Digital Trust Solutions or someone like Notabene. If you are a business, we also have that covered, for instance, with Global FinRec. And then you get your personal identifiable information as an ID object within the wallet. This could be age, it could be a country of origin, it can and important stuff like that. And when you, as a user, go out and you then need to effectively do a zero knowledge proof and prove some of these statements that are potential, could be a stablecoin issuer or a money market fund on top of the platform is asking for, then you can actually prove that statement without revealing any other information and without that having any information being stored elsewhere. So it's not just a hash of anything that resides anywhere on the blockchain. It is your own accurate personal identifiable information that has been verified by a certified entity, and then you use that information to prove various things. So for instance, within Concordium now, we're looking a lot at proving specific jurisdictional areas in terms of geofencing, but it could also be, right now we're speaking to a specific larger money market fund who's actually very interested in being able to only have accredited investors that are available to use their platform. Now, to be a credible investor, that can actually be a verifiable credential that can be defined by them and then can be added into the Concordium wallet, which they then can use on the platform. So in that sense, you take real world Web2 identity information you wrap it in a nice way within the Concordium Cortex wallet, and then through zero knowledge proofs, you prove what you need to prove in order to access these various services. And at the same time, the platform that is asking for these proofs is then still completely compliant with, for instance, GDPR regulations, because they're not storing any information they're not supposed to. But at the same time, they are ensuring compliance checks in a full private manner to make sure that they are compliant with the specific regulations they have to be. So that is how we do
Yeah.
that at Concordium.
Yeah,
Maybe you
that
can
is
talk a little bit about that for Privado ID, Ravi.
Yeah, certainly. I think those are some of the good examples, but maybe adding a couple more from our side. So I would say that there are two ways that we have been seeing where majority of our ecosystem project have been leveraging and addressing this particular aspect on compliance side. So when it comes to compliance, I believe there are both sides to it, where compliance need to ensure that there is a traceability as and when needed for the information that may be required to prove that you have checked the data, and that's where you have a record for keeping that data. And on the other side, it also adds up a data liability for the service provider, and hence they also wanted to minimize the amount of data that they should be asking for and storing, right? So it has to be a balance between how much data is required and what information should be available if needed for audit purpose. And that's where we see two approaches. The first one is where certain projects, I can think of the on top of my mind one of the project based out of India, where they are doing this verification for certain restricted area check-ins, and they need to have the name and at least the address of the user who is coming in, and that's where a selective disclosure is being provided, which is not necessarily giving the entire data, but only the selected information that is required. And that limited information is something that is reducing the data liability on the service provider. The second one is where, even though there is a zero knowledge proof being asked, and this is another example in the Web3 space by a provider called QAC, where they are doing a sanction list screening before they allocate a particular individual for the tokens in their token launch, and they need to ensure that the user is not coming from a sanction list. So they are working with one of our ecosystem project or a partner where the information is coming in a zero knowledge proof, but the records are kept for 7 years. In case if there is any audit purpose, they can go back and get that information from the this issuer from the ecosystem, and that's where they are not necessarily being non-compliant, or rather getting into a whole lot of storage of those information.
Exactly. That's actually a very good point, Ravi. And just to build a little bit on top of your question, because it is a good one, Simon, right? I mean, especially how we're working here right now at Concordium with trying to attract more tokenized money market funds. If for everyone not aware, right, if you take an MMF, they're more of a short-term, low-risk investment vehicle, but they require strict compliance with regulatory frameworks. And when you are tokenizing these MMFs, issuers sort of enable on-chain liquidity, programmability, and more global access, but they still need to adhere to a lot of these compliance rules. So, as I touched a little bit upon before, like if you take a verifiable credential such as a proof as an accredited investor status, many jurisdictions could be, especially here if we talk about the US or the SEC, they restrict investments in certain funds to accredited or qualified investors. But just to your point, Simon, if you do CKP implementation properly, and if you do it combined with an ID layer at the foundational level, investors can actually use these CKPs to prove that they meet these accreditation criteria. It could be something like you need to have a net worth above, let's say, $1 million, or maybe you need to have annual income around, let's say, $200,000. But being able to prove that without revealing their actual net worth or specific income, because basically they are asking for a proof, and then with the information that resides within your verifiable credential, you give a yes or no. So the benefit of that is that institutions can verify the compliance without exposing any sensitive financial details to third parties or competitors or what you have it, right? So it's about finding that balance and using the technology where these financial services can comply with the rules, regarding portfolio diversification, etc., but without exposing any limits to it, right? So you use CKPs to prove you meet these requirements without revealing any, for instance, full disclosure around holdings. So it's basically around protecting sensitive fund composition from competitors and allow regulators to audit these funds' compliance in a private manner. I hope that answers your question. Do you have any follow-up here on that?
No. I could dig deeper, but I think I can draw a line, and just at the bottom of the line, I could summarize that. I think systems that come up with an protocol layer that is considered to be the identity protocol that helps with traditional SSI, self-sovereign identity tech, utilizing verifiable credentials, basically as the main premise to make users actually own their data, but still have a record of data points that can be used for audits in the future, also as Ravi mentioned, and then combining this with ZKP for privacy preserving reasons on the verification level. I think that combination seems to be the also in our experience not the holy grail yet, but it seems to be the best solution we came up with so far to maximize compliance and privacy and data ownership at the same time, which is pretty cool.
Exactly. And I mean, you can take it even further, right? Because for a lot of, I mean, if we're talking about how identity is essential here for payments and financial services, for payments to function in the real world, there needs to be a certainty about who is transacting, where funds are going, whether compliance requirements are met. And so far, all the TradFi has relied on decentralized entities to sort of ensure transactions are legally compliant. And finding that sort of balance and using the CKP technology as an enabler within decentralized finance, where there is no bank to verify transactions, and especially within stablecoins ecosystem, where there's no central oversight body ensuring funds are legally transferred, etc. That is sort of what creates this fundamental challenge that we're talking about right now, because how do you ensure that these Web3 transactions are legally compliant without reverting to centralized financial models? And I think we can all agree that the answer is, of course, blockchain-based native identity solutions that enable these verifications without sacrificing privacy. So it is a very interesting sort of problem alleviation field that we're moving into here, where there aren't a lot of specific platforms that are solving this right now. But if we take it a little bit further here, Ravi and Simon, in terms of how especially trust is a catalyst for adoptions, and how identity verification enhances trust. Ravi, especially within these regulatory considerations that you guys are doing right now, for Privado ID and what you're doing here with Billions, and how these identity solutions can help Web3 projects to stay compliant. Maybe you can speak a little bit about more exactly how it is that you do this in Billions, and where you see what pain points you are alleviating with that.
Yeah, certainly. I think trust as a catalyst is something that I believe we have been hearing for quite some time. If we have seen multiple survey reports, I think everybody says that in the upside of 60-70% is where consumer says that they are going to be choosing a service provider, which is ensuring that there is some level of trust in terms of in the user data side or user data privacy side of it. I think this has been building up reputation by the verifiers is going to be critical. And what we have realized that whether it is from a regulatory pressure or not a regulatory pressure, this is where the differentiator comes for a service provider, when they are ensuring that they are providing that level of trust for the users to interact in the digital era. Um, you know lately we have been also seeing that with the growth in the AI agent space, there is also this kind of an element of trust is required. Imagine that, if today we are talking about the App Store, or the Android Play Store or Apple Store, where we go, let's say, for downloading a scanning application, before we even download, we try to see what are the parameters or what kind of reputation this particular app belongs, right? Whether we have enough downloads for this particular app, or there is 4.3 out of 5 rating, or who is the owner of this particular app. On a similar like, we think in terms of the AI agent space growing up, we would need this kind of a trust and reputation for the agents, and that's where at Privado ID we are working, actively in order to create that kind of a trust layer for agents as well. Now, imagine that if this kind of agents also hold up some tagging to their developers, some tagging to the organizations that is owning those agents, and then we can tag in those credentials to the agents for being fair, or maybe for their training data and so on. That brings a lot of trust for the users who are going to be interacting with those agents, right? I think, needless to add it, that it has been one of the area where we wanted to ensure that service provider are also adding this kind of capability when they are providing those digital services. But we are super excited in terms of the new AI space that is growing, and how the trust is going to be an additional layer required there when we are thinking of the agents for everything. And sooner or later, I think we are estimating that we are talking about trust for 8 billion people, but then we are soon going to be talking about maybe 100 billion agents, and then the demand for this trust is going to be growing multifold.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So Simon, I also actually wanted to run something by you, and it's specifically a little bit focused on some of this smart contract risk that we're seeing all around the space right now. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and as well as within the Solana ecosystem and with Solana ID, if that's something that you are starting to focus a bit more on, and it is becoming a growing and larger narrative, which is definitely hindering adoption right now. Because I mean, at Concordium right now, we're sort of building out these protocol level tokens, PLTs, which are then issued natively at the protocol, removing smart contract vulnerabilities such as duplication, exploits, scam addresses, which you also talked a little bit about in the beginning. And then we're also sort of further adding flexibility and these locking mechanisms at the protocol level. So there's precise control over fund transfers and security, because we are trying to enhance the trust and enhancing much of the payment functionality, which is sort of available outside of Web3. But if you take a look at right now, especially within Solana as well, there's still like a big dependence on smart contracts, which create these security risks. Is this something that you are experiencing focus on within the Solana ecosystem, or something that you are maybe even looking at for Solana ID yet?
I think it's a special case in our, like, if you compare especially the setup between Concordium and Solana ID, because we are an identity layer built on top of a blockchain protocol, while you are the blockchain protocol. So obviously we're tackling these issues on very different fronts here, because we are reliant on what the Solana protocol is doing on a protocol level, and that is coming usually from the token standard itself, which is so far the proven standard, the SPL token standard. And it's a technology that is obviously being curated on a Solana Labs Foundation level. And there are always improvement proposals going through on the protocol level that we can't directly influence as an identity layer building on top of it, right? So we are reliant on what Solana as a blockchain is doing. And we are less focused as an identity protocol on establishing our own standards around tokens or smart contract risks. So I think Solana is definitely it's a controversial topic inside the ecosystem, because we do have millions of tokens right now being launched every single day, and we are known to be an ecosystem that is suffering from not vulnerabilities per se, but from security risks in terms of who's the token issuer here? Can you trust the entity, and can you trust the technology behind it? But the good thing is, like, we can trust the SPL standard. We can trust that the tokens are secure and that the network is functioning properly and the standards around it. And we need to make sure that we now build technology on top of that on an infrastructure level to maybe secure the issuer side of things more, so we can identify the people that actually issue the tokens, make sure that the right tokens are being traded, and that's something that the protocol is working on throughout all kinds of players. Like, it's not just Solana ID, it's more the DeFi apps, actually, the DEXs that are involved in these topics more. So Jupiter is big on that front with their token strict list, basically classifying tokens as verified based on their on-chain data strictly. So if the token has enough volume, if it's verified as the actual token that you want to trade, then it gets the green check mark from Jupiter. So I think they're providing the tooling on top of the SPL standard. And our job as Solana ID is more to make sure that the people trading these tokens, that issuing these tokens, are the right entities.
No, I definitely understand that, but what we are seeing more and more, and which is especially what's attracting in these more decentralized ecosystems with builders such as yourself, founders such as yourself, and trying to have a voice, right? And trying to be a part of the governance structure and trying to be a part of the decision making in terms of what needs to be built out and what needs to be built in terms of securing the survival of the ecosystem, the industry as a whole, and also adapting to the issues at hand, right? So it was more or less, if you are experiencing some of these narratives building up now, especially getting more and more focus when we see some big hack like Bybit happening, and if there's any way with you being definitely the largest and most used identity protocol within Solana ecosystem, and if that's some internal roadmaps that you are trying to push, or a narrative that you're trying to push because you are better positioned with what you have already built out now with your features and the ID layer is a scalable layer 2 solution. I think that was more what I was going at.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're positioned there, and we're also ourselves working with Foundation and are in contact with them for identity standards on the Solana blockchain itself. And on Solana, we are doing this inside of a small identity consortium of ID players that are not only Solana ID. There's other companies as well, obviously, that are building in the ID space on Solana. And Foundation is trying to listen to us builders, consolidate the requirements from protocols on Solana and their problems and their needs, and then build standards around that. And there are some things cooking, I can say that, but there's also some technologies that we're building in the back right now with Foundation as well that are not yet public, and we can't announce them yet, but Foundation will probably, even this month, talk about this publicly as well.
Definitely. Because I mean, we are seeing more and more stable coins and payments that are basically the fastest growing use cases in blockchain right now. Of course, Ravi as well, very much focused on AI agents and that whole subvertical on the side, which is also growing at a rapid pace. As we are seeing now with what you are building out with Billions as well. But when we take some of these larger entities that are coming into this space, and we're seeing these announcements popping up everywhere as well, also in the Solana ecosystem, Simon, in terms of Visa and MasterCard and PayPal through Paxos, who's issuing their stablecoin. We're seeing central bank digital currencies and tokenized assets that are gaining more regulatory momentum worldwide. And we're seeing how cross-border remittances and treasury payments are slowly but surely moving to blockchain due to cost savings and efficiency gains. And it must be important, no matter what, that these things are not blocked by these compliance issues, right? So if you take the stable coins, their need for identity verification, their need for AML and KYC, and you take these regulated finance structures that requires more security, that requires less smart contract risk. And now it's important that we are all focused on building out that functionality in different ways, as we're all doing, whether you are a core layer one infrastructure or you are a scalable layer two ID solution within one ecosystem, or with you, Ravi, as Privado ID, that is not only now focused on Polygon, but sort of scaling out towards more ecosystems. It's something that we have to think into the roadmaps if we want to be able to to meet the needs that this growing space is having, right? So I think it's a very relevant point to focus on, at least, especially if you're talking about how ID and verification needs to drive trust to get these entities more safely and securely stored and adapted to this space as a whole. What you want to say here, Ravi?
No, 100%. I think, needless to say, that stablecoin has become one of the most adopted use case in Web3. I think that is where we are able to bring in so many new users into the ecosystem. What we are also seeing is that there is a huge capital sitting outside there, just thinking in terms of how can they become mainstream part of the Web3 technology and gain the merits of this particular technology. But this compliance layer is something that is required to be solved, and this is where this kind of capital can flow into the mainstream Web3 ecosystem, whether it is primarily the yield from DeFi and others. I think this is where we are, interestingly seeing three mainstreams use cases that are appearing. Stablecoin is something that we have discussed, which can also cover the way CBDCs are being taken care, or otherwise the hybrid way of doing stablecoin, which is maybe a regulated bank doing a stablecoin. I think those kind of scenarios are there. Asset tokenization is another one where we are also seeing that large financial institutions or trade FIs are, trying to capitalize in terms of leveraging this particular technology and the merits of this technology and bringing in those kind of tokenized asset to be accessible for a large user base. And then I think the third one is where we are talking about those kind of capital from this TradeFi users, where they can adopt the technologies like DeFi. So very well aligned with both of you in terms of, we are seeing that this is the space where we would be incrementally make the compliance layer and bring in the integrations of those large institutions, especially from the traditional finance world, and take advantage of this merits of Web3 technology.
Very well put. Guys, I'm just realizing now that we went 5 minutes over already. Started the space at 11. It was supposed to last 45 minutes, but I'm not gonna allow this space to end without anyone leaving with a closing remark. And then actually, I also see that we have some questions, but we will take these offline after, and then I will also immediately promise everyone listening in that we'll have a follow-up space, both with Solana ID and Privado ID, sometime here in Q2, end of it as well, because it is truly interesting, and I definitely think that the key points that we are touching on right now, the critical role of identity, the critical role of trust, and the critical role of compliance within Web3 payments and financial services, from our part at least, is only something that we'll see a growing demand for the rest of 2025. That is an absolute certainty. So within that regard, before I wrap everything up and give a closing remark myself, let's start with you, Simon. How do you want to end this?
I think you're spot on that. I think this year is again a revival of the need for identity technology. We've seen kind of a slowdown in that niche after 2020, 2021, when it was first highly discussed and brought up to attention by industry leaders, by Vitalik talking about it, by a lot of people with a big voice talking about the need for better identity solutions. and I can feel it in the air right now that people are that people are talking about it more, because it's needed not only for institutional adoption but also for an improved user experience for the apps itself. And that's my goal for Solana ID. Improve the user experience for both businesses that are building their business and their products on chain, and for users that are navigating the blockchain world with their wallet accounts as their sovereign account, that might have a need for deeper identification systems. I think data has always been the one of the most important sectors in the internet. It's all about data at the end of the day, and identity technology is inherently about data. And it's not just about some data; it's about privatized data that is now ideally owned by users and anonymized on chain, so that we can build a new era of the internet that actually provides the privacy that we didn't that we weren't able to enjoy in Web 2 at all, right? So I think we really want to walk that fine line that I elaborated earlier on as well, between an improved user experience and better data sets, while still maintaining the privacy that's needed and demanded also by everyone, basically, right? And I'm pretty bullish that people are now seeing that, and I'm also very bullish on the identity builders like yourself, like Concordium and also Privado ID, just hammering it down and sticking around and not giving up and iterating and finding solutions that the market wants to see. And I think this year is going to be a very good year for that sector.
Exactly. It's about getting rid of the centralized identity models that are vulnerable to breaches and censorships. And I agree. We are sticking. We're in it for the long haul. That's why we've been building for such a long time, and it's only good to see the narratives and the industries being steered in the right direction, and start to sort of appreciate and acknowledge the importance of decentralized ID within this space. Ravi, do you want to give a closing remark as well?
Sure. Yeah, I think starting with a light note. So, tick in a box to what Simon mentioned, Vitalik's paper about identity back in days. I think now he has again written a new paper including identity as a topic. So, looks like that's another tick in the box in terms of the identity wave coming up. But I think on a more serious note, there have been a lot of top-down approaches that we have been seeing either from EU as a geography, UK. I think they all are trying to see how digital identity is being brought into the mainstream, and or individual citizen holding up an identity wallet for all things that they need to prove to avail several services. I think that's a very big milestone and a welcoming a step in order to bring digital identity into mainstream. And as I was emphasizing on the growth of AI, I think that's another dimension in terms of how do we see the data economy, where again verified data might attract more premium for model training, and at the same time bringing in that identity for agents and machines. I think those are all things that we are very bullish in the coming year.
Very good. Exactly. And I think as well, which is not a secret now, that at Concordium here, we are really starting to focus on the future of finance, and we're really starting to acknowledge how it's digital, but also that without trust, it cannot scale. And Concordium has always been trying to prove that identity can be both private and compliant, while it's enabling the next generation of payments and stable coins and tokenized finance to operate securely on a more global level. And this is especially, which was always the idea of blockchain technology to begin with, that you need to be able to do this without relying on intermediaries or central authorities. And what we are doing now with removing smart contract risk and building out programmable money features at the protocol level, this is exactly the ethos and what we're trying to go to market with now. And it's great to see that that we have industry peers like yourself, Privado ID and Solana ID, not working with exactly the same, but working in other ecosystems as well, trying to establish trust, and out there and talking about the importance of decentralized ID, and how it sort of bridges Web 2 users to Web 3. So with that, I think it's good for all of us to end this space now. It lasted an hour. It was only supposed to last 45 minutes. Simon and Ravi, it's been a complete pleasure having you on. We'll definitely do another one at the end of Q2, and then let's try and focus a little bit more on some of these issues that you guys are seeing in these very large ecosystems, such as Polygon or Solana as well, and how you're trying to sort of lobby these centralized or the decentralized governance structures and models and people that is building out the features towards focusing more on DID. Because you're right, Simon, here at Concordium, of course, we are an infrastructure in and on our own, and that's why we are now focused on building out this for ourselves as well. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening in. It's been a true pleasure, and have a good day.
Amazing. Thank you so much for setting it up. Stay solid, guys. See you at the next one. Thank you.